Today I'm going to talk about how to break some things in D&D without breaking your game. One of the things that I've loved about D&D growing up was, to me, it represented the ultimate hike. When I was young, I would always get together with my friends on the weekend and we'd go climbing up the mountain or go hiking into the wilderness. To me, D&D channeled that feeling. However, one of the things that I always felt was missing from the rule set was that feeling of not being prepared, and not only that, but having that worn-in feeling to all your equipment and gear when you're traveling out and about in the wilderness. So, just like any good camping trip, not everything you bring with you is going to last the entire camping trip. In D&D, one of the flaws that I felt was that all the equipment and inventory and weapons that a character buys doesn't have any kind of degradation or any kind of wear and tear element built into the rules itself. Now, I don't want to burden DMs with extra rules and extra mechanics just to simulate that kind of wear and tear feel in their games, but I've come up with some ideas that might help you flesh that out and give it a little bit more flavor. Now, without jumping into full survival mechanics in your games of D&D, it is possible to introduce elements that kind of channel that survival element that players might have if they're traveling in the wilderness or actually adventuring in real life. Now, I know D&D is a fantasy game and you can eschew certain things that might happen in real life, but there are certain things that I think might actually add to the flavor of the game. Take, for instance, when a character is actually building their character at first level and they buy a suit of chain armor or they get a sword as one of their choices. Now, fast forward 20 adventures later, they're still wearing that same chainmail suit of armor and possibly still wielding that sword. Now, unless a magical item comes along to replace either of those two pieces of equipment, the player's not really going to have any motivation for revisiting the weapon shop or even going into a blacksmith the next time they're going into town. I think that this rule might give them a little bit of an incentive to keep an eye on that equipment that they've been adventuring with. I think that you can introduce kind of an easy, sort of flavorful rule that might give them a pause when it comes to the next time they're in a town looking at some new gear. That rule is the warn rule. Now, warn is a keyword that I've introduced in my games, and it's not so much of a rule mechanic per se, but it's kind of like a verbal warning to players. What I've done is I've started going into their D&D Beyond character sheets and inserting that word in front of any equipment that I feel has been in a large amount of use or has taken a lot of abuse over the past whatever amount of game sessions we've had. Whether that be a sword, a piece of armor, a backpack, clothing, anything of that nature, I'm simply inserting the word warn. This is the player's cue to keep an eye on that item for potentially damaging effects or potentially something to go wrong with the item. So how many times can a sword smash against the hard exterior of a monster or get deflected by a shield or a piece of armor? How many times can your armor withstand a blow that would kill a normal man? These are all good questions, and I think the game rules don't really address it, but I also don't think that they provide a DM with any ideas on how to address it. One of the things that you can do when using the warn rule is to simply explain to the players that their armor might be getting a little bit worn. Scraps of the leather or links in the chain that they have are starting to break. If it's a weapon that they're using and you want to insert the warn rule, you can simply tell them that their blade is getting dull, or maybe they're starting to notice chips in the blade. It doesn't mean that the actual armor or weapon itself is going to break or is broken, but it gives the players a little bit of a feeling that this equipment isn't invulnerable and isn't immune to wear and tear. Now, if you want to get technical, you could possibly insert the rule that every time a natural 20 occurs against the player, that piece of equipment that is on the receiving end of that natural 20 takes some abuse. Or, better yet, the more times that they use a weapon, it increases the chance that that weapon might be dull. Now, if you want to take it to a step further, you can actually start targeting things like their clothing. Non-important things, but still important nonetheless. A character who prides himself on his clothing might actually start to get tattered or ripped. One of the clever things that I did is I inserted the keyword warn onto his clothing, but I also attached a rule that said he's going to be disadvantaged on any charisma checks he makes while interacting with people in a social manner. This is just sort of a cue to tell him that you look like crap. You've kind of been out in the field and you've been adventuring for enough time that your clothing has taken the brunt of it. On other items, you can simply just explain to them that maybe the straps of their backpack are starting to wear from the weight of all the gold and treasure that they've been hauling around. Things like quivers can be fraying at the edges. Just any kind of creative way that you want to insert that doesn't necessarily have a rule that follows along with it. Get creative and throw that little caution to the players in the form of a great description. So just know that if you implement any of these ideas into your D&D campaign, you're going to be putting food on the table for all those blacksmiths, those armorers, and all those clothing shop vendors in all the D&D towns in your campaign. Give your players a reason to revisit those shops, spend some of that gold that they've earned on all the treasure hunting and dungeons they've been exploring. It also might give your players a sense of, hey, you know what, this is a real world that we're playing in, and it's kind of got its own little natural economy and, you know, things that happen in the game, whether it be just trekking 5 miles across the wilderness and end up having to replace a pair of boots, or whether that be just swinging your sword and hitting a dragon and, you know, lo and behold, your sword breaks because it's kind of the final time that it took its last swing. Use some of these ideas to flesh out the flavor of your games, and I don't think you'll regret it. I hope you're all having fun playing D&D out there, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Before you go, I need your help. I'm trying to grow the exposure of what we do here at Maverick Games. My goal is to actually bring information to parents and students for fun, academics, and even support of neurodivergency. Please subscribe and make sure you click on those notifications. I don't do paid ads or sponsorships. And I hope that you can find content here that's enjoyable for yourself and maybe others. Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in.